in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I'm Mr. Green, and I'm here today with my close personal friend, Shaun Clarke, a professor of cinematography, of filmmaking at Emerson College. And he's here today for this special Throwback Thursday edition of Office Hours. I'm going to ask my old friend, Shaun Clarke, what it's like to be a college professor, what it's like to make movies, and what it's like to be friends with Mr. Green. Shaun, first of all, could you tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a college professor?
Sure. Being a college professor is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding because I get to work with a lot of really talented and interesting students. So the months when I'm working the most are the months where there's classes are in session. So September through December, and then we have a little break for winter break, and then we come back from January through May. And so those are really the most busy times for me, especially in managing my classes. In addition to teaching classes, I also have a chance to make my own creative work, my own movies. And so during the breaks between classes, I spend a lot more time focused on producing my own films, my own work.
That question pretty well. Hey, Shaun, can I call you Shaun, or would you prefer I call you
You can
Professor
call me
Clarke?
Shaun because we're old.
Friends, my old friend, Shaun. Shaun, you can call me Mr. Green. But so anyway, I'm going to be uh, asking you a few more questions. I want to remind you, Shaun, can we try to slow down the speech a little bit? I know that you are very used to speaking to college students. You got that fast, go get them, uh, get that degree, make those movies. But we're slowing it down here, trying to get a better sense. Tell me a little bit more about some of your students. I think I know a lot of my students, middle school students, are curious to know how would you describe the college students? What is the life of a college student like from your perspective?
Well, I only see the college students in classes, so I don't have a lot of interaction with college students outside of the class. So let me
It's not to interrupt you, but I think that's we're focusing on the academics here,
Sure.
Shaun.
So, but a life of a college student involves not just their schoolwork, but also the work that their homework, their social lives, their athletics, and so it's a much more unlike being in high school or middle school where you go home to your family at night. The college students are living usually in the dorms and living with their classmates. So their life really revolves around college almost all the time when they're in school. In terms of being in classes, the college students, the expectation is that they are much more self-sufficient in their studies than the high school students are. So we expect them to take responsibility for knowing what their work is that they have to complete and handing that work in on time and doing the work at a very high level. And so that might be the biggest difference between middle school and college is that you have to take a lot more responsibility without the teachers uh, showing you and walking you through every part of your studies.
So, Shaun, what you're saying is, as a college professor, you don't feel as though you have to force it, maybe as much as the middle school teachers do.
Um, I think that the expectation for college students is that they have to take the responsibility uh, to to complete their work. And so, yes, my job as a college professor is different than a job like Mr. Green, who teaches middle school, where the students are still learning how to take that responsibility on. By college, the expectation is that the students know how to do those things. We're there to support them and help them, but the expectation is that they're the ones who are going to be taking the responsibility for their work.
That answers that. Another question I have, Shaun, is how did you become a college professor? Like, what did you have to do to get to this point today?
Well, Well, I went through many years of school. So I started with elementary school. I went to middle school and then high school. After high school, I went to college, which is considered my undergraduate studies. So I did 4 years of college. After that, I went and I worked for a few years in a TV station, working with them primarily around the training program and helping to teach others how to make movies and TV shows. And then I went back to school. I went to graduate school for 3 years. And all of that schooling that I did helped to prepare me to be a teacher myself and gave me the proper graduate degree, a master's degree, to be able to teach at the college level. In addition to school, I also did work as a filmmaker, which helped me to understand and learn about filmmaking and about film and TV production. And so the combination of my teaching, of my schooling, of going to school for many years, and also of my experience in the film and TV production world combined allowed me to get a job as a teacher at the college.
Now, you teach at the same college at which you got your master's degree. That's Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
And Shaun, you're my old close friend. We've known each other since high school, right?
Correct.
Uh, you teach at a college. I teach at a middle school. I didn't really know you in middle school. Could you maybe tell the folks at home what do you remember about middle school?
Well, let's see. I grew up and went to school in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I don't live there anymore, but my family does live there. Um, in middle school, I remember I went to the same school from kindergarten through 8th grade. But in 6th grade, when we started middle school, there were a lot of new students who came into our school. So I remember throughout middle school getting to meet a lot of new people that I had not been in school with the previous years, and learning. And it was also the first time where I had to think about my studies separately between math and history and language arts. We had different teachers for each of the subjects, and that was the first time I didn't have just one teacher. I remember being excited about the topics that we were discussing in class throughout middle school and having very excellent teachers throughout my time there. Maybe not as excellent as Mr. Green, but excellent teachers nonetheless.
Uh, Shaun, you're too kind. A close personal friend. I appreciate it. What was your favorite class in middle school? You talked about how you had different teachers for different subjects for the first time. I know the same is true at Keith Middle School in New Bedford, Massachusetts, as it was in Cambridge. What was your favorite class?
Well, my favorite class that I can remember was probably a result of having my favorite teacher teaching it. Mr. Hutchison was my language arts teacher in both 7th and 8th grade. And Mr. Hutchinson was a very excellent teacher who exposed us to a lot of interesting literature, and he also was just a very warm and friendly teacher. He was also very funny, so a lot of the classes were very fun because he would tell jokes throughout. Um, and so, because of the teacher that I had for language arts, I would say language arts were my favorite classes to be in. I also loved science, so I remember really enjoying my science classes as well because we got to do some experiments in class. We got to talk about interesting subjects as well.
Excellent. And speaking of science and language arts, how much of that do you feel you still use even today in your day-to-day life as a college professor, as a filmmaker? You do you ever still think back on the lessons from middle school or high school, things that you learned way back when?
Yes, absolutely. Uh, Filmmaking and film production is a very interdisciplinary art form, which means that there are a lot of different skills and a lot of different knowledge that you have to combine into into the production of one piece. So almost every subject that I studied in middle school and in high school and even before that has some application to film production. For instance, when it comes to science and technology, a lot of the technology that we use to make films, cameras, lights, sound equipment, editing software, is all based off of scientific discovery of how they can make these pieces of equipment, and design them. When it comes to math, when we think about budgeting or certain conceptual conceptual matters when it comes to cameras involve numbers and arithmetic. So all the math skills that I acquired in elementary school and middle school and high school are all necessary in order for me to be a filmmaker. And then as a college professor, there's a lot of communication that we have to do both through face-to-face and then also through email, and so written communication. And so the ability for me to communicate with students or with my colleagues is very important. And so a lot of that stems back to my time in elementary school and middle school.
Thanks so much. Hey, just want to say one more time, this is a very special episode of Office Hours, special Throwback Thursday. I'm here with my close personal friend, Professor Shaun Clarke from Emerson College. We're talking about technology. We're talking about middle school. We're talking about learning. We're talking about the way the world has changed. If you have questions for Professor Clarke, Shaun, feel free to add them in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to ask you, you mentioned about how technology is playing a bigger and bigger role in filmmaking. Technology is changing the way that we're teaching right now in Massachusetts with remote learning. Can you talk a little bit about some of the big changes that you've seen just in terms of making movies in the time that you've been working in this industry?
Sure. The tools that we need to make movies, primarily cameras, but also lights and microphones and computers, have become increasingly more affordable than they were in past years. So it used to be that most people in most schools and most organizations couldn't afford video cameras. They were very, very expensive. They were prohibitively expensive. And so now, anyone who owns a cell phone even usually has a camera built into that cell phone. So they have access to technology that used to be very hard and very expensive to be able to access. And so it is more common that young people and even older people have had the experience of taking pictures or of recording video themselves. So it is a far more what we call democratic process now of making and sharing videos. And in addition to recording the videos, we also have the ability for people to share those videos with a much bigger network. Anyone who's shot a video and shared it on YouTube is allowing the entire world who has access to the internet and to computers to be able to see their videos. And so whereas in the past it was very difficult to make movies and very expensive, now it has become much more affordable and more accessible to people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to do it.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, you can film from a studio or you could film right from your dining room in New Bedford, Massachusetts, your living room in Chelsea, Massachusetts. Shaun, we've got about 90 seconds left before we're going to end this special Throwback Thursday episode of Office Hours. I hope that you'll be able to come back in the future because I'm sure that a lot of people have a lot of questions for you. We won't be able to get to all of them. I do have one last question, though. Do you have advice for the young people of today, this generation, the Zoomers, as they're inside? Coronavirus is a global pandemic, but there's all this technology. Do you have any advice about how they can share their voice and help build a better world? We got 45 seconds left.
I think that if you have access to cameras, I think being able to record things that are interesting to you or things that you want to communicate to other people is very important. And then I think that being able to share that, whether it's on YouTube or using social media, Instagram, TikTok, is very powerful. And so people should think about what they are contributing to the world through the media, photographs, video that they share.